Okay, so off to topic 2.2. Whoops, we are going to be talking about the mitochondria and the chloroplasts today. Two specific organelles. Eukaryotic, or not every eukaryotic cell, right? Not every eukaryotic cell has a chloroplast. Every eukaryotic cell does have mitochondria, right? These are kind of our energy producers. You can think of this if you remember from your freshman bio class. C6, H12O6. You'll remember this from earlier in this unit. That's a sugar, right? Keep in mind, same amount of carbons and oxygens, twice the amount of hydrogens. So sugar is kind of broken down or oxidized into CO2, and a lot of this is a lot of what you're removing from this is energy, usable energy by the cell in the form of ATP, right? So this is the process that occurs in mitochondria of the cell. Now the chloroplast, if you remember, takes, and of course there's more to it than this, but chloroplast takes CO2 from the air and uses energy, right, from the sun. Energy, light energy, right, and kind of stores it in the form of glucose or sugars, right? So CO2 is being taken from the air and being stored, being converted into a sugar, and light energy is being stored, right? In the mitochondria, we are taking these sugars and breaking them down into energy, chemical energy in the form of ATP, and we're, our waste product for that is CO2. So this is not the whole formula for cell respiration, not the whole formula for photosynthesis, but I just wanted you to see the basic process that we're going to be talking about without going into too much detail, because we have a whole unit concerning cell respiration. This over here, cell respiration, which occurs in mitochondria, and photosynthesis. Photosynthesis, which occurs in the chloroplast of cells. Okay, so let's take a look at these. There's some terms I do want you to note. This is, of course, a mitochondria on the left, a chloroplast on the right. Here is a transmission electron microscope, TEM, right? This is an electron microscope image of a mitochondria. Very, very small. This is 1 micrometer large at this point. Very, very tiny, very small. If you'll notice, this mitochondria has a lot of folds in it, a lot of area for stuff to happen, for this thing to happen, actually. That's what all these folds are here. These folds, all these folds inside are known as crista. You know that word for sure. I'm underlining it, I'm not crossing it out. There. And inside here, this fluid inside these folds, crista, this is called the mitochondrial matrix. Ribosomes you'll find throughout mitochondria. This you should remember. Remember, mitochondria, this is just a flashback to something we talked about in our evolution unit, endosymbiotic theory, right? Refers to the fact that mitochondria and chloroplasts used to be their own prokaryotic cells, right, until they were engulfed by a larger cell. So this is just going to call back to that a little bit, but definitely know what a crista are, matrix. Know that mitochondria have an outer membrane and an inner membrane, right? So we have 2 membranes here, 1 and 2, outer and inner. If you remember, let's take a look at the membrane. We're going to be seeing a lot of pictures like this later on. But you should remember this phospholipid bilayer, either from freshman bio or from some of the stuff we've talked about so far. This forms the basis of a membrane. Of course, there's a lot of other stuff going on in there, but that's the foundation of a membrane is this phospholipid bilayer. Okay, so 2 membranes for our mitochondria over here. Let's go look over at our chloroplast. See what we got going on here. Some words I do want you to know, which I'll underline, is the stroma. Stroma. This is this fluid outside of these stacks of grana. The thylakoid, or the thylakoid membrane. This is what we're going to be concerned with, really, is this membrane around these thylakoid stacks, or these grana. Grana, that's plural. Grana. Definitely know this word. This is 1 stack of pancakes, if you will. Thylakoid membrane surrounds all of this stuff in here. It's very green. It's filled with chlorophyll, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Also, there's an inner and outer membrane for chloroplast as well. So those are some things I want you to know. Go ahead and pause the video. You might want to draw a quick picture of a chloroplast. It doesn't have to be this detailed, but definitely make sure You know what a granum is, where the thylakoid membrane is, inner, outer membranes, and the stroma is this fluid kind of outside. Another thing that's not shown on here, which will be shown on the next slide, is I'll just show you this next slide. Only other thing I want you to know from here, actually it doesn't show you this slide, but this stuff in here, this light yellow stuff inside these thylakoid membranes is called the lumen. The lumen, L-U-M-E-N. It's right here. Right, so I've zoomed in kind of on one of these thylakoid membranes, and you see the lumen on one side and this stroma on the other side, right? And this is just kind of a zoomed in look. This is more of a preview than it is something you need to write down. You don't need to write down all this stuff over here because you're going to see that plenty, and we're going to learn about it later. What I would like you to notice is that there's stuff moving from one side of the membrane to the other, right? You'll notice this H+ ion right here moving across through this protein to the other side. What we're going to be talking about a lot coming up in this unit is the movement of things like H+, things like lipid molecules, signaling molecules, all sorts of stuff, ions, stuff that moves across a membrane. We're going to be talking about that quite a bit in this unit. So it's kind of the only reason I zoomed in on this is to show you that there's a lot going on here in these spaces. Right? So don't necessarily draw everything here. Do label on your other drawing, label the lumen inside here, because that's going to be important later on. And make sure you understand that these are all phospholipid bilayers that we're looking at. This is very common. Right? Let's take a look at mitochondria. See the same thing. It's very similar. Don't compare these yet. Don't worry about comparing these yet, but they are very similar processes in reverse. You'll notice that this mitochondria has the matrix here, right, on one side, and then the intermembrane space on the other side, which is this space kind of outside in here, right, this intermembrane space in the matrix. You have these embedded proteins, and again, you have ions moving across there in different ways. H+ is moving out in this direction. It's also moving in another direction. So we're going to talk a little bit about how that works and all that stuff. I just want you to kind of take a look at these mitochondria and chloroplasts and understand kind of some of these basic pieces of anatomy. So the crista, the matrix, the fact that it has ribosomes in it is very important. The rest of this we'll talk about much later on. Although you will notice, again, it does have its own DNA. Right? There is some deoxyribonucleic acid in these mitochondria. So just an interesting point. But we're going to talk about a lot of this later on in further units down the road. So make sure you know the basic anatomy. Know that cell respiration and photosynthesis take place in these organelles and in which ones they do. And I think you should be good for this unit. Okay?